I never imagined my sister's wedding day would teach me exactly where I stood in my family. Not beside her, not behind her, but on the floor, outside the hall, like something they didn't want seen. The wedding venue glittered with gold lights and white flowers. Guests laughed, music echoed, and cameras flashed nonstop. Everyone looked dressed for a perfect memory. Everyone, except me. I had arrived early, holding a small wrapped gift in my hands, my heart oddly hopeful. No matter how distant my family had become after my marriage, I still believed blood mattered on days like this. I was wrong. At the entrance, my mother stopped me with a tight smile that never reached her eyes. "Sit there," she said, pointing not to a chair, but to the tiled floor near the shoe racks. I blinked, thinking I'd misunderstood. "There?" "Yes," she said sharply. "The inside is full. Don't make a scene." Before I could respond, my aunt quietly slid a plastic mat toward me, like I was some inconvenience they were trying to hide. No chair, no explanation, just the floor. I looked around. Strangers were being welcomed inside, guided to cushioned seats. Distant relatives I barely recognized were sipping drinks. Yet I, her own daughter, her own sister, was being placed outside like an afterthought. "Why?" I whispered. My mother leaned closer, her voice low and cold. "This wedding isn't about you. Don't embarrass us." Embarrass them. I sat down slowly, smoothing my dress over my knees, my face burning with humiliation. My sister walked past me moments later in her bridal outfit, surrounded by laughter. She didn't stop. She didn't look at me. She stepped over my legs like I was part of the floor. That hurt more than anything. As guests passed, some stared, confused. Others pretended not to notice. A child asked loudly, "Why is that lady sitting there?" His mother pulled him away without answering. I stared at my hands, fighting tears. I reminded myself I was married now, that I had a home, that I wasn't that powerless girl anymore. But sitting there, barefoot among scattered shoes, I felt small again. My phone buzzed. A message from my husband. "Running late. Traffic. Are you inside?" I hesitated before typing back. "I'm here." I didn't tell him where here was. Minutes passed. My legs went numb. Music grew louder inside. Laughter exploded when the ceremony began. I could hear vows I wasn't allowed to witness. Then my mother walked past me again and hissed, "Stay put." That's when something inside me cracked, not loudly, but completely. Because at that exact moment, the main entrance doors opened behind me, and a familiar, steady voice said calmly, "Why is my wife sitting on the floor?" The room went silent, and I realized they had no idea what was about to walk in with him. R. They thought humiliating me was safe because they believed I stood alone. They didn't know my husband had arrived or what he was about to demand in front of everyone. When my husband said those words, it felt like time folded in on itself. "Why is my wife sitting on the floor?" His voice wasn't loud. That's what made it terrifying. Calm, controlled, clear enough that everyone within 10 feet heard it. I slowly turned my head. He stood at the entrance in a charcoal suit, shoulders squared, eyes scanning the scene, not in confusion, but in calculation, the kind of look he wore when something didn't make sense and he intended to fix it. My mother froze mid-step. My aunt's smile slipped. A few guests turned in their seats. Others pretended not to stare, but the silence spread like spilled ink. I tried to stand, embarrassed, but my legs had gone stiff from sitting too long. My husband noticed immediately and crossed the distance in 3 strides, offering his hand. "Easy," he said softly, helping me up. "Are you okay?" That was it. That simple question broke me. I nodded, even though my throat burned. "I'm fine." He looked down at the mat, then at the floor, then back at my face. "Why weren't you given a chair?" he asked, still calm, still measured. Before I could answer, my mother stepped in. "Oh, it's nothing," she said quickly, waving her hand. "The hall is crowded. She didn't mind." My husband turned toward her slowly. "She didn't mind sitting on the floor?" he repeated. My mother forced a laugh. "It's just for a little while. She's family. She understands." Something shifted in his expression, not anger yet, disbelief. "Interesting," he said, "because where I come from, family is given the best seat, not the worst." Murmurs started, low whispers. Someone coughed. My sister finally noticed the tension and rushed over, irritation flashing across her face beneath her bridal makeup. "What's going on?" she snapped. My husband met her gaze. "Congratulations on your wedding." She nodded stiffly. "Thank you." He gestured toward me. "Why was your sister placed outside like she doesn't belong?" Her eyes flicked to me, then away. "It's complicated." "No," he replied. "It's simple. Either she belongs here or she doesn't." My father finally spoke, his voice firm but uncomfortable. "Son, let's not make this a big issue. Today is about the bride." My husband nodded once. "Exactly. And yet somehow humiliating my wife became part of the celebration." That's when the stares became unavoidable. Guests were openly watching now, phones lowered, conversations stopped. The wedding music inside faltered for a moment before continuing awkwardly. I felt exposed, like every painful family moment I'd ever swallowed was suddenly standing in the open. My mother leaned closer to him and whispered harshly, "If you have respect, you'll let this go." He smiled politely. "I do have respect. That's why I won't." Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. "Before we go any further," he said calmly, "I'd like to ask one more thing." He turned to the event manager standing nearby. "Who's in charge of seating?" The man raised his hand nervously. My husband nodded. "Good, because we're about to rearrange some things." My heart started pounding, because I knew that tone, and I knew this moment wasn't about chairs anymore. They thought my husband came to calm the situation. They had no idea he was about to expose why I was treated this way and who had been lying all along. The event manager shifted on his feet, clearly uncomfortable. "Yes, sir?" he asked. My husband looked around the entrance area, at the crowded hall beyond the doors, the velvet-covered chairs, the VIP section glittering under chandeliers. "Is there truly no seating available?" my husband asked. "Or was my wife specifically told not to sit inside?" The manager hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. My mother's eyes widened. "Why are you asking him?" she snapped. "This is a family matter." My husband didn't look at her. His eyes stayed locked on the manager. Answer honestly, he said, because I paid attention when I walked in. There are at least 6 empty seats inside. A ripple moved through the crowd. Heads turned. People leaned to look past the doors. The manager swallowed. Sir, there were instructions. From whom? My husband asked. The silence stretched. Then, softly, the manager said, from the bride's side of the family. My sister stiffened. I felt like the air had been knocked out of my chest. My husband turned to her slowly. Instructions to do what? The manager cleared his throat. That your wife should wait outside until the ceremony was over. Wait outside. Not sit in the back, not stand discreetly. Outside. On the floor. My sister raised her chin defensively. It's not what it sounds like. My husband nodded thoughtfully. Then explain it. She exhaled sharply. I didn't want any distractions today. She brings attention. I stared at her. Attention? I whispered. She finally looked at me, her eyes hard. You married up. People talk. I didn't want guests comparing us. There it was. The truth they had buried under politeness and tradition. My husband didn't raise his voice. That somehow made it worse. So, he said calmly, you hid your own sister on the floor so no one would notice she married a man you consider embarrassing or threatening? Gasps echoed. My mother rushed in. Don't twist this. We were protecting family dignity. My husband smiled again, but this time it didn't reach his eyes. Dignity, he repeated. You made my wife sit among shoes. A guest near the door whispered loudly, That's horrible. My father looked away, shame written across his face. I felt tears well up, but I refused to cry. Not now, not here. My husband reached for my hand. Do you know what hurts the most? He said, addressing them all. She didn't even tell me. She was ready to endure this quietly. I squeezed his fingers, my chest tight. My sister crossed her arms. So what do you want? An apology? Fine, sorry. It was hollow, empty. My husband shook his head. No, I want honesty. He turned to the crowd. My wife was treated this way because some people here believe status matters more than blood. Murmurs spread. Faces shifted uncomfortably. Then he said the words that changed everything. Since status is so important, maybe it's time everyone knows who they were trying to hide her from. My stomach dropped, because I knew what he was about to reveal, and I knew my family wasn't ready for it. They thought hiding me would protect their image. They didn't know my husband was about to reveal his and destroy the illusion they built their pride on. The entrance felt smaller somehow, like the walls were leaning in to hear what my husband would say next. My mother opened her mouth, panic flickering across her face. There's no need for this, she said quickly. Let's just move on. My husband didn't even acknowledge her. He looked at the guests instead. People dressed in silk and jewelry. People my family had tried so hard to impress. Many of you may not know me, he said evenly. That's intentional. I don't attend social events often. My sister scoffed under her breath. Then why start now? He glanced at her, calm but piercing. Because today you crossed a line. He turned slightly toward me. When I married her, I promised something simple, that no one would ever make her feel small again. My chest tightened. He faced the crowd again. So let me clear up a misunderstanding. I'm not here because I'm late.
I'm here because my wife was humiliated. My uncle tried to laugh it off. Brother, it's just a seat issue. It's not. It's a values issue. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a slim card holder. He handed a card to the event manager. Please pass this to whoever arranged payment for this wedding. The manager glanced at it, and his face changed. Color drained, his eyes widened. Sir, this company? Yes, mine. A wave of confusion rolled through the guests. My sister frowned. What does that mean? My husband answered without looking at her. It means the venue, the catering, the floral contract, and the live orchestra were all booked through my firm. My mother's breath hitched. That's not possible. He finally turned to her. You never asked who paid the vendor discounts you were so proud of. The whispers grew louder now. Someone behind me said, Wait, isn't that one of the top firms in the city? Another voice, I thought they only work with corporate clients. My sister's confidence wavered. You're lying. My husband smiled, calm and devastating. Ask the manager. All eyes turned. The manager nodded slowly. Yes, ma'am, the contracts were corporate-sponsored. Silence crashed down. I watched my family's expressions shift from disbelief to realization to something close to fear. My husband slipped his arm around my shoulders. You hid her because you thought she married beneath you. He paused. You were wrong. My father finally spoke, his voice unsteady. Why didn't you tell us? My husband answered gently, because she didn't want me to. I felt tears burn again, this time from something warmer than pain. My sister's face flushed. So what? You're rich? That doesn't change anything. My husband looked at her steadily. You're right, it doesn't. Then he added, What changes is this. Everyone here now knows that you didn't humiliate her because you had to. He leaned in just enough for the room to hear. You did it because you wanted to. That's when I saw it, the exact moment their pride cracked, and I realized this still wasn't the end. They thought the truth was the worst thing that could happen. They didn't know my husband hadn't come to expose wealth, he came to demand accountability.
The room stayed frozen, like everyone was waiting for someone else to move first. My sister broke the silence with a sharp laugh. So this is what this is about? Money? She said, forcing confidence back into her voice. You're trying to embarrass us at my wedding? My husband didn't answer right away. He looked down at me instead. Do you want to stay? He asked softly. That question mattered more than anything he had said so far. I looked at the hall, the glittering decor, the guests who had watched me sit on the floor without saying a word, the family who decided my place was outside. My chest felt heavy, but my voice came out steady. I want respect, I said, not pity, not silence. He nodded once and turned back to them. You heard her, he said. So let's talk about respect. My mother stepped forward, eyes glossy now. We didn't mean it like that, she said quickly. People misunderstand things. I met her gaze. You told me to stay put, I said quietly. You watched me sit there. She flinched. I didn't think it would become this big. My husband's tone hardened slightly. Humiliation always becomes big to the person carrying it. My father rubbed his temples. What do you want from us? He asked, tired and defensive. My husband didn't hesitate. A real apology, in front of the same people who saw her treated like she didn't belong.
The word real hung in the air. My sister's eyes widened. "You can't be serious." He nodded. "Very." She looked around, realizing all attention was still on her. Guests leaned forward. Phones were discreetly raised again. "I'm the bride," she snapped. "You're ruining my day." I finally spoke, my voice calm but shaking underneath. "You ruined something first." She stared at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. My mother swallowed hard and spoke again, slower this time. "I'm sorry you felt hurt." My husband shook his head. "That's not it." She frowned. "What more do you want?" He replied evenly. "Try this. I'm sorry for choosing my pride over my daughter." Her face drained of color. My father looked away. My sister clenched her jaw. "I can't say that," my mother whispered. That answer hurt more than the floor ever did. I felt something shift inside me, not breaking this time, but settling. My husband squeezed my hand. "Thank you for being honest," he said to her. "That tells us everything." He turned toward the event manager again. "Please cancel the remaining reception services under my company's account." The manager froze. "Sir?" "Yes," my husband said, "effective immediately." My sister gasped. "You wouldn't." My husband met her gaze. "I already did." A wave of panic rushed through my family. My aunt started pleading. My uncle argued. My mother looked like she might collapse. I stood there, strangely calm. For the first time, they were the ones losing control, not me. My husband leaned down and whispered, "Are you ready to leave?" I looked one last time at my family, the people who taught me silence, endurance, and shame. Then I nodded. "Yes," I said, "I am." We turned toward the exit together. And that's when my sister screamed my name. Just when I thought walking away was the end, my sister said something that stopped us cold and revealed the one truth she had been hiding all along.
My sister screaming my name felt like a hand yanking me backward. "Wait!" she shouted, her voice cracking through the entrance hall. Every conversation stopped again. Even the music inside faded into an awkward echo. I felt my husband slow beside me, his grip firm but gentle, silently asking if I wanted to turn around. I did. My sister stood there in her wedding dress, eyes glossy, mascara threatening to run. For the first time that day, she didn't look powerful. She looked desperate. "You don't get to walk out like this," she said. "Not after doing this to me." I let out a slow breath. "Doing this to you?" She took a step forward. "You always do this," she snapped. "You make people choose you." A bitter laugh escaped me before I could stop it. I was sitting on the floor. She flinched, but pressed on. "You've always been the problem, ever since we were kids." The words hit a place I thought had gone numb years ago. My husband's arm tightened around me. "Careful," he warned quietly. She ignored him, her eyes locked on me. "Mom and Dad worried about you because you never knew your place. You were never supposed to outshine me." There it was, the sentence she had practiced in her head for years. My mother gasped softly. "Enough," she whispered. But I wasn't done. "You mean like when I got into college first? Or when I paid my own fees because you needed the money more?" My sister's lips trembled. "You think you're better than us." "No," I said. "I think I was quieter." The guests weren't even pretending anymore. They were watching openly now, faces tense, uncomfortable, unable to look away. My husband spoke again, his voice steady but edged with steel.
You punished her today because you were afraid." She shook her head wildly. "Afraid of what?" "Of the truth," he said, "that she never needed to be smaller for you to be big." Something inside my sister finally broke. "She was supposed to struggle," she shouted. "That was the balance. I was the successful one. I was the one they praised. And then she marries you, and suddenly I'm the one hiding." Silence swallowed her words. I felt tears rise, but I didn't let them fall. "So you put me on the floor to remind me where you thought I belonged." She couldn't answer. My father sank into a nearby chair like the strength had drained from him. My mother covered her mouth, sobbing quietly now, not for me, but for the truth finally spoken. I looked at my sister one last time. "I didn't come to take anything from you. I came to celebrate you, and you couldn't even let me stand." My husband leaned closer to her. "This is the last time you'll ever speak to my wife like that." Then he turned to me. "Now," he said gently, "we leave." As we stepped through the doors, I felt lighter with every step, like something heavy had finally been set down. But just before the doors closed behind us, I heard my mother's voice break through the chaos. "Wait," she cried. "Please, don't go like this." I paused, because I knew what came next would decide everything. I thought leaving was the final victory. I didn't know my mother was about to make a choice, one that would either heal the past or end it forever.
I stopped walking. Not because I felt guilty, not because I felt weak, but because for the first time in my life, my mother's voice didn't sound commanding. It sounded afraid. I turned slowly. She was standing near the entrance, her shoulders slumped, wedding lights reflecting off tear-streaked cheeks. Around her, relatives stood frozen, unsure whether to comfort her or protect their pride. "Please," she said again, "don't leave like this." My husband stayed beside me, but didn't speak. This moment wasn't his to control. It never was. I looked at my mother, the woman who taught me how to cook, how to be quiet, how to endure. The same woman who told me to sit on the floor and stay there. "Like what?" I asked softly. She swallowed. "Like you don't belong to us anymore." The irony almost hurt. I didn't belong inside either. She flinched. "I know," she whispered, "and that's what I'm ashamed of." That word, ashamed, was new. My sister stood behind her, silent now, staring at the floor she once thought was my place. My mother took a shaky step forward. "I spent years comparing you," she said, "telling myself it was for balance, for peace. But today," her voice cracked, "today I chose wrong." The guests shifted. No one interrupted. Even pride knows when it's cornered. "I can't undo what I did, but I can say this, out loud." She turned toward the crowd. "I made my daughter sit on the floor because I was afraid of how bright she'd become." Gasps rippled through the room. I felt my breath hitch, not from pain this time, but from something dangerously close to relief. "I taught her to shrink," my mother said, "and today she refused." She looked back at me, eyes red. "If you walk away now, I won't stop you, but I needed you to hear the truth." Silence followed. I searched her face for excuses, for manipulation. I found none, only regret that had arrived far too late. I took a deep breath. I forgive you, and the words surprised even me, but forgiveness doesn't mean access. Her eyes widened. You don't get to decide when I return, and you don't get to decide where I sit, ever again. She nodded slowly, accepting the boundary like a consequence she'd earned. I turned to my sister. She didn't speak, she didn't apologize, and that told me everything I needed to know. I took my husband's hand. As we walked out, the doors closed behind us, not dramatically, not angrily, but finally. Outside, the night air felt clean, quiet, mine. My husband opened the car door for me and smiled gently. You stood tall today. I sat down, smoothing my dress, no floor beneath me this time. I always was. I just stopped kneeling. As we drove away, music from the wedding faded into the distance. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't leaving something behind. I was choosing myself.